Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 258 of the J Situation Podcast. I'm recording this on May 6th, 2025. How are all you folks doing? I'm doing well. We've been pretty deep in testing, actually, in between all of this dang rain. You have to get it while the getting's good. You know, that's what I say. No, in all seriousness, some really interesting things running through our laboratory recently. Some we will be able to show you. Some we will never be able to show you, unfortunately, but it is the nature of suppressed small arms in general, and that is what it is. But I think there's some really cool stuff coming through that you guys will in fact see, and that's always great for everybody. This episode is interesting because we need to go circle back and catch up on some things. My apologies for that. In our rush to get that members research supplement out to Pew Science members, we delayed the technical discussion of the BOE Mod 1, the 14.5-inch 556 M4A1 data and analysis. That research article white paper was published on April 16th, and we did the intro talk, but we did not do the deep dive. So today we will do that. I was going to say, if we have time today, we're also going to hit the Otter Creek Labs Infinity 300 Blackout deep dive, but I expect we will probably have to slip that to next week, which is fine. We're going to dig ourselves out of this hole, I promise. Sometimes it happens, okay? Now, on with the show. If you've been here before, welcome back. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. We're so glad to have you here. We're going to have a great time talking about suppressed small arms and physics and all kinds of cool stuff. There are timestamps in the episode description for you to skip to wherever you would like. But if you want to hang around with me a little bit longer, I'm going to quickly speak to you about the companies who make this podcast possible, which is good for, again, everybody. This podcast is sponsored by Legion Athletics, because nothing you do, exercise, sports, really anything, is worth doing without consistency. You have to do things all the time if you want to be good at them, right? And Legion Athletics can help you with that. Whey protein, pre-workout, post-workout, creatine, vitamins, minerals. They're minerals. No, do they have everything you need? Most definitely not everything. However, they do have a lot of it. Visit legionathletics.com, link in the show notes. Use that link. Use code word PewScience to save 20% off of your first order. Keep using that code the entire time you shop from them, and you'll help the podcast, and you'll get 10% off. Basically, goes cash back on everything you buy. And if you're like me and you buy a lot of whey protein and creatine and vitamins and stuff like that, just because it's part of your normal routine and your supplementation routine, stuff you can't or aren't getting from food, it will save you money, which is great. Podcast is also brought to you by the fine folks at Silencer Shop. That's right. They've been with us from the very beginning, actually. Silencer Shop was with Pew Science since the inception. Before it was even public, they supported us, and they've done a lot for the industry. And so if you're a new dealer looking to get started in the space and don't want to hold inventory, Silencer Shop is one option for you. Consumers do like it because they can use the kiosk, and it's kind of an all-in-one, one-stop shop. Do the fingerprints and photos electronically. It cuts down on errors. It does simplify the Silencer purchasing process. You get a money-back guarantee when you buy from them, which is pretty unheard of. So it's pretty great. You don't pay any transfer fees. You don't have any paperwork errors. It's you and your Silencer with no drama. It truly is Silencer ownership simplified. And there are really good dealers that use their system. For example, one of them is Top Gun Range Houston. That's another sponsor of this podcast. They've been with us for quite a while too. We actually really love their range. We've been to their range. All the people that work there are awesome. If you're just passing through Houston, even if you don't live there and you're just passing through on a business trip, I don't know if you're finding a hobby. It's probably a little. It's not. I don't know. Just tell your boss that you need to go run an errand or do some marketing or something. I'm doing some BD&M in Houston, and then go shoot some pistols and rifles and shotguns and machine guns and silencers. You can rent silencers there and shoot. And you got the largest firearm rental fleet in the entire state of Texas. It's crazy. Okay, check them out. You can go to the website topgunrange.com and Instagram at Top Gun Range. Kyle and his crew will always answer your questions. They're very approachable and very cool. And most importantly, they use Pew Science data to help their customers, which is really what you should do if you're an honest dealer. I think it's one tool. Okay, it takes the pressure off of the dealer, and it puts the pressure on us, and we love the pressure. It's like Ace Ventura. What would you know about pressure? Laces out. Capital Armory also sponsors this podcast. It's no secret that silencers are in high demand. Did you know that? They are. It's because of the ATF approval times have dropped. So the demand has skyrocketed because, let's be honest, tax stamps suck, but the wait time sucks more because people are impatient. That is the nature, opportunity cost goes up. And so chances are silencers are going to be out of stock in a lot of places because the manufacturers can't keep up. So you need options. Capital Armory is here to help you with that. Not only do they do all the other stuff that everyone else does, selling silencers with the paperwork and the fingerprints and all that stuff, but they're actually pretty wild because they can ship the silencer directly to your door. That's right. If you live in one of the 42 states where silencers are legal, you can order a silencer in your living room and have it shipped directly to that same living room, which is, let's be honest, with the approval times, what they are now, that is nuts. Okay? It really is that easy. Capital Armory, silencer shipped directly to your door. And finally, and most importantly, more important than anyone, this podcast is brought to you by the Pew Science Laboratory. Okay? I'm the technical director of the lab, and we have continued in our 5th year of operation in the interest of public education to sponsor this podcast, to make this podcast happen every week, and to continue to publish research publicly with the hopes that we are pushing the silencer industry forward one test at a time. I think over 5 years we've done that. We've proven it. So visit pewscience.com for the suppression rating. The simplest and most accurate hearing safe rating for your suppressed small arms is based on true human inner ear response of the entire gunshot from before the combustion takes place all the way until all the combustion is gone and all mechanical operation of the weapon system has ceased. Very important. Pew Science is the home of the Silencer Sound Standard, 7 sections, the most in-depth and accurate silencer data and analysis that we know of in the world, all available to the public 24/7 at pewscience.com. And please support the podcast if you can. You can support Pew Science too, all in one place. All you got to do, you join with a membership at pewscience.com. It's that easy. It's super cheap. And now that the dollar has been devalued from rampant inflation, it's basically free. What's $7.95 a month? Nothing, dude. It's free. No, it's not free. It can be, yeah. Subscriptions can add up. I get it. And if you don't want to spend any money, don't, dude. You donate a one-time fee if you want. And if you don't want to spend anything at all, just spread the word. Let folks know that silencers and guns are awesome. And we'll continue to do what we're doing for the next 5 years. We're not stopping. I'm just telling you could help us if you want, which would be awesome. And, maybe, I could take my kids out to eat more or something. Probably not. They need to be healthy. Like and subscribe, 5 stars, all that jazz, whatever. So one topic for you today, we'll go into today. Let's see. Let me get my notes here. Make sure I'm on target for you. Okay, so what we'll do, we're going to move into topic 1 at a time of 7 minutes and 56 seconds. Okay, on the timestamp for all of you folks listening. Excuse me. So we'll do that. We'll do the intro to this Sound Signature Review 6183, the BOE Mod 1 and the 14.5-inch mid-length gas 556 M4A1. So this is 14.5-inch 556 data. It's the BOE Mod 1. Okay, it's another player entering the 556 suppression space. There's 3D printed involved. They have kind of a design twist. We went over the intro talk week of, on April 16th. I forgot the episode, but April 16th when we published the article. But today we're going to do a deep dive, technically, as is tradition. We usually do it the week after. We waited a little bit. Not a problem. You're here. That's all that matters. Okay? So what I will do is I'll break this topic into subtopics with timestamps as we go through. That way, I've just been told they help. Some people like them. And if some people like them and get use out of them, I'll do them. Because I want everyone to learn. The more people that listen, the better. And frankly, a lot of people have been going to YouTube to listen, which is new. I mean, YouTube just auto-publishes from the RSS feed. Most people listen on like iTunes or Spotify or download the website. But there is now, I think, I looked the other day, I want to say there's like over 7,000 subscribers on YouTube, which is nuts because we don't even I'm like, and I respond to comments on YouTube and stuff. But that's cool. Like 7,000 new people that didn't even know about it maybe, which is so cool. And there's people that listen that aren't subscribed as well. So I think we're reaching a bigger audience. So we will timestamp to help you. So if you want to see where other stuff is, just look in the episode notes or on YouTube or Spotify or whatever and get the timestamps. Okay. So the Mod 1, I have it on my desk. back to this BOE Mod 1. I have actually took one of them apart. And by the way, the picture posted with today's episode, and if you're on YouTube, it's the picture that's staring you in the face as you listen because we don't use video. That is a core of a Mod 1 variant. Interesting, right? And this, again, was 16 April was when we published it. Folks have now had quite a while to read the report, digest it, and even see if folks in the wild that have this silencer have been experiencing congruent things regarding performance, like with what they read in our testing and analysis report versus what people are experiencing when they shoot it. You have had time, I'm sure, to reconcile that if you have desired to. And that's one of the really neat benefits of the silencer game at the current time. We didn't used to have that in mass, really, right? Because at least at the current time, and now it's May of 2025, your approval times are moving really, really fast. So folks, of course, if you're new to this, folks used to have to wait a year or more, and now folks are getting approvals in a matter of days and sometimes even hours, which is nuts. So as you can imagine, even though this BOE Mod 1 is relatively new, there are actually people out there who have them already and have shot them already and have given feedback already. And we've been sent it, we've read it, and we've been enjoying it. It's really cool. And speaking of feedback, a lot of people do know and have expressed that this silencer system is pretty quiet. I don't think it can be debated, really. Because that's actually what our data and analysis that we're going to get into today shows. And if you've read the article, you can see that. There are some interesting things about the silencer. And one of the things that I find interesting is the internal structure. Yeah, so I think the best way to do this, let's see. We're going to go through... what we'll do, we'll go through the silencer's physical characteristics first, then the performance that results from those characteristics, and then we'll get into some performance comparisons with other things in the research pedigree, and we'll kind of progress from there. Sound good? Okay, so let's do physical characteristics at a time of 12 minutes and 13 seconds. And we'll just consider that previous section an intro for you folks. Okay, so physical characteristics of the BOE Mod 1. The silencer is, and again, you can pull up the article if you want to follow along, but we'll get into that in a second. But I will say the silencer is 6.8 inches long without a mount. So you can consider it a full-size rifle silencer for 5.56, of course. But if you were to use it on 308, for example, you might call it a mid-size silencer. And why, you may ask, would I be saying 308? Well, this silencer is actually modular in that the core itself is modular. That's right. The tube is the serialized portion, and it is machined. It's a machined tube. But the inner core that screws into the tube is 3D printed. And like we explained in the intro talk back 16 April, the core can be changed. It can be swapped out. So let's say you purchase this 5.56 Mod 1 and you want it to be a 30 caliber Mod 1 instead. You contact BOE and they will swap out the core for you for a nominal fee. I don't recall that exact cost range. Contact them for that. I think I mentioned in the last episode that we talked about this. I just don't remember. It's not my department. Another thing this lets you do, as you can imagine, is upgrade the core from BOE at a later date. Like, let's say they make an improvement to the silencer. You don't need a whole new stamp or anything. You just upgrade the core because it's not serialized. Okay. You wouldn't need a new stamp. Now, there's a caveat. And some of you new to silencers might not know this. Actually, some of you very experienced old silencer folks might not know this either, so I'll tell you. This is, of course, a like-for-like swap, meaning the ATF will let you exchange the cores, but it will not let you have multiple cores on the same stamp. Okay, because that would be like having multiple silencers, which would require multiple tax stamps. Okay, clear as mud? Yeah, I know, it's frustrating. But the ATF regulation of these things isn't going anywhere anytime soon. Okay, no matter what you might think you're reading in the news, these are not getting deregulated anytime soon. So you might as well strap in for the ride. Okay, if you're waiting to buy silencers until there's no tax stamp, you're going to be waiting longer than you think. So yeah, modular core, and you can also get these in multiple materials. This one that was tested as part of our research program is an Inconel core in the titanium tube. But you can also get titanium cores to save weight if you were so inclined. Okay, that weight savings will come at the cost of supreme durability, for example. But it's all about your use case as always. Barrel length, firing schedule, cartridge, all that good stuff. So that part is cool. Modular core, but back to the size. So this is the 5.56 configuration we tested, and it is 6.8 inches long without a mount, like I was saying. So it's not a small 5.56 silencer. The Mod 1S does exist from BOE, but the model here is the full-size Mod 1. So now it's hub compatible. We tested it with BOE's own mounting system that screws into the back of that. It's interesting. It's kind of like a Xeno mount, but not. Okay, it's left-hand threaded like a Xeno mount with a taper forward of the threads, as you would want, but it also has a secondary taper after the threads, behind them. So when you look at the engagement surfaces, you'll see that yes, indeed, both tapers are functional. I can assure you of that. I'm not sure we've seen something quite like that before in a silencer mount, though I may have forgotten, and it doesn't matter. Anyway, I thought that was interesting. I imagine it could potentially increase the integrity of the lockup and the seal and offer a little bit of redundancy, but it would depend on some factors, I think. I'm not 100% sure exactly, because you would have to really scan the thing and to get the dimensions and lockup. From what I can see, it seems to be working fine. It does have generous wrench flats on the rear of the mount, which I'm telling you, as someone who installs and removes a lot of silencer mounts, that is pretty convenient. When you screw this into its hub mount coupler in the proximal end of the silencer, you will increase the length from 6.8 inches to 7.7 inches. So that mount system does add about 1 inch to the whole system. And that is an important thing to keep in mind. The mount does not come with the silencer, but it is available from BOE. Okay, I believe that's true. Don't make sure go to their website and link as linked in the article. But I don't think they sell that mount. I know they sell the mount, but I don't know if they sell the mount with the silencer. I can't remember. Anyway, the muzzle device itself is a muzzle brake compensator type device. Now you got all you Pew Science technical gurus. You're asking yourself, well, does that increase back pressure somewhat? And potentially does. Potentially does. We need to do more controlled experiments to understand that. That's just something that wasn't part of the program, so I really can't. Well, it was somewhat, but I can't go into the details. Regardless, I don't have a definitive answer for you on that type of mount just yet. Okay. Now, speaking of phenomenology, moving into the blast chamber of the silencer, or another word for that for you physicists that are not gun guys, the first expansion chamber. That's where things start to get interesting. And this is something that is actually common to all of the caliber designations that we have seen for the Mod 1 system, because there's more than just 5.56. This seems to be common to all of them. The geometry is, at least for now, common between the models other than bore size. I think that's a true statement. We do explain the overall geometry in the report. If you haven't already, you can do that now. You can pull up Sound Signature Review 6.183 at pewscience.com. There's a link in the show notes, of course, or you can get there from the review page on the website, or even from the rankings table in section 7 of the standard on the website at pewscience.com/rankings if you want to search for it there. Members of Pew Science, please pull up the member version of the review, the full one, and everyone else, if you're not a member, you can always follow along just fine with the free version if you like. You'll miss a little bit of things, but nothing. I'm not going to leave you behind. Okay, so once you have the article up, 6.183, and you have to scroll down on the main review page because we've published some since then. We have 183 up. What I want you to do, ignore all the beautiful distracting colors and scroll down until you get to the Pew Science technology note in the second paragraph under Figure 2. Okay? So as I said in the intro talk a couple of weeks ago, this is the simplest way I could think to explain the geometry in the silencer. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read this to you. right now in the podcast, and then we can step through it bit by bit. But if I try to explain it just off the cuff, because the geometry is so complicated, when you look at it, it's not going to seem complicated in the picture I posted with the podcast. But if I don't read this, I will butcher it. So here we go. The core design of the BOE Mod 1 uses traditional baffle cone geometry in a gross sense. However, the core is relatively unique in that all the baffles other than the final distal baffle possess alternating radially angular surfaces that terminate longitudinally into an outer course lattice. You following? So the lattice, this outer part of the core, it forms the outer diameter boundary of the core. The longitudinal termination of each cone ridge, so the ridges coming off each cone, they form the outer lattice wall, like they're physically connected, understand? So when the core is installed in the outer tube, the outer diameter of that core does not touch the inner diameter of the tube. This is key. So therefore, there is annular space between the core and tube. The geometry is best viewed in photographs on the manufacturer's website, like I said in the article, but again, you can look at that in the picture. If you're driving in your car right now and the album art on your MP3s or whatever shows on the screen on your car, you'll see that core. That's why I took a picture of the core today for you, okay? So commonality of this geometry is present in all current calibered core designations, with the following design features of note being relevant to performance. And then I listed three. This is important. There's three notes there in the technology note. The first is the radially alternating angular blast baffle and subsequent baffles are not ported. That's important. The final distal cone baffle is radially ported. That's important. Third, the lattice wall pockets in the first expansion chamber, in the blast chamber, they do present the same blast load angle of incidence as the pockets in each subsequent expansion chamber between the baffles. So what that means is the angle of approach of the blast wave, we call that the angle of incidence in blast analysis, in weapons effects. The angle of incidence of the blast load approach is identical, or should be identical, in each chamber. And the subsequent chambers, they're simply formed by the termination of the baffle ridges. Okay, I know it's the way I'm saying it sounds complicated but it's objectively the way it is. And so when you take all that together, and this is in the note too, it's written that the system suppression performance is dependent upon what? It's dependent upon maximizing surface area contact with the geometry that we just described of the on the ridged baffles and in the lattice wall pockets, and the back pressure is dependent on other stuff. It's dependent upon those same things, but also it's dependent on what? The annular flow that's created in that annulus between the outer core wall and the inner tube wall. It's also that porting into in the last baffle. And third, or another thing is dependent upon the back pressure is dependent upon end cap selection by the user, because yes, you can add a vented end cap. Okay, so that's what that technology note is there, and if you missed some of that, that's okay. Go to the article. The Pew Science technology note in the second paragraph under Figure 2 literally says this word for word. You can read that again and again and again, and there's a link in there to go to the manufacturer's website if you want to see more pictures. So, one second. So there are cones. Okay, as you would expect, but those cones are ribbed. Now, none of the cones are vented except the last cone. Yeah. So the really interesting thing is that the entire outer wall of the core is perforated, and the outer wall of the core does not touch the inner wall of the tube. So you do have an annulus, but to get to the annulus, you must pass through the core voids. Okay, again, look at the picture on the podcast or pull up the BOE's website to see a photo. To vent to the annulus, you must pass through the voids. And in doing that, you are really making contact with a lot of surface area, which is really great. Baffle ridges, no ports except for the core walls until you get to the end, and tons of surface area to get into the annulus. And every interstitial baffle cavity has annular access. So on its face, right away, you're probably thinking, well, gosh, this seems like it would relieve stagnation very well and it would suppress with high efficiency. And you would be right. This is a very efficient way to manage blast load propagation, create turbulence, and ramp up heat transfer efficiency, for sure. And the data shows that. What may be a little unexpected is the back pressure is a little higher than you would like, or I would like, or some people would like. But that's a consequence of relieving stagnation into such an open lattice down the entire length, I think. I mean, when you stall at the end, your omega metric skyrockets. We've seen that. So as far as early time, mount can somewhat play a role, as can that blast chamber. And you can alleviate late time omega, the distal blast momentum propagation rate used, that we measure with the omega metric. You can alleviate that by using a vented end cap. And you'll probably see us publish that at a later date. But right now, looking at this core, most folks would understand that you're going to need to use the vented end cap to really drop back pressure and or tune your gun for optimal flow rate to lower the ejection port blast. Okay, and when you look at the muzzle suppression rating and the shooter's ear suppression rating for this system, I think that's going to make sense to you. I think it was. So let's do that. Let's move into the performance discussion now, and we'll talk about that at a time of 25 minutes. In 53 seconds. Okay, very good. We're making good time, which is excellent. 1 second. Okay, BOE Mod 1 performance discussion. Yeah, performance characteristics, rather. So, okay, again, here's where you're highly encouraged to pull up the article if you haven't already. I've warned you 3 times. If you still don't want to do it, that's fine, but this is where the rubber meets the road. A publication 183, 6.183 at pewscience.com. We're going to start at the top. Okay, suppression rating graphic, top of the page, there's colors. 44.0 muzzle suppression rating. That's 1 meter left of the end cap, 1.6 meters above the ground in the true free field in accordance with the true MIL standard 1474 Echo protocol that is open source and that everyone has had access to for quite some time. Okay, that is fired on the 14.5-inch barrel M4A1R3 mid-gas rifle, 076 gas port at the mid-length position on the barrel, H2 buffer, standard carbine buffer spring. Okay, that's 44.0 at the muzzle. That's high. Very high. Now, 6 inches right of the shooter's right ear, again, in accordance with the MIL standard 1474 Echo and the Sansa sound standard, which is the strict interpretation of MIL standard 1474 Echo. 6 inches right of the shooter's right ear, 19.7 suppression rating. Okay, quite a bit lower. Yes, why? Well, it is in fact a completely different zone on the suppression rating scale. Yes, actually 2 zones lower at the shooter's ear on this host weapon than 1 meter left of the end cap on this host weapon. Quite the disparity in the pressure field. Quite the disparity in personnel risk, you would say. Wouldn't you? If you look at this in the rankings chart, which you can, and you were to filter only M4A1 data in the chart, what colors do you see in the chart when you do that? We color-coded it now, remember? What colors do you see in the suppression ratings on that chart if you only filter M4A1 data and only look at 14.5-inch M4A1 data in that chart? What do you see? You see some dark yellows, then moving into some pinks, right? And I'm sorry if you're colorblind, but we're teaching to the majority. Okay, but you have the numbers to guide you if you're colorblind. It's okay. I'm telling you, if you can't see colors, I'm telling you what you are seeing is you're seeing colors that signify more warning. The closer you get to red is bad and scary, right? That's universal. So if you look at just M4A1 data, all the suppression ratings are going to be dark yellow, then moving to the pinks, which is more severe. That's 40 zone down to below the 30 zone and into the low 20s and lower. So what does it depend upon? Well, it depends on the muzzle, depends on the ear. But right away from the colors in the chart, looking at only M4 data, you can see that an untuned gun like this with a silencer is not super duper safe without hearing protection, is it? No. Isn't that the whole point of this? That's what you should realize, okay? This is actually super dangerous for the shooter. Why? Well, ejection port blast will get you, and it is unforgiving. People talk a lot about not tuning their guns, and that's fine. But I have news for you, sir or ma'am. If you are using a silencer that doesn't have a super high flow rate, an adjustable gas block is a very good decision, or can be a good decision. For those of you on the fence about that, or if you just want to see some hard data supporting that conclusion, I would ask that when you have time, you examine report 6.111 and its sister article 6.110. Okay, that is the Maximum Defense DSX on the Mark 18, and then another upper that is the same, basically, except for gas port size. Look at the shooter's ear risk reduction there, and tell me what you see once you shrink that gas port size. Okay, the difference is actually non-trivial in personnel risk, in risk space. Okay, so Back to the mod 1 second. I know I'm talking fast because we have to get through this at a reasonable time. So, mod 1, really high muzzle suppression rating, lower shooter's ear rating, but you can indeed tune for that and or use the vented end cap. Okay, the vented end cap will lower your muzzle rating, but your shooter's ear rating will increase as you increase the rate of distal blast load propagation, the rate of blast momentum out of the end cap, which directly drops its omega metric. Directly drops the late time back pressure. That's right. So let's look into a little bit more about what makes it tick and look at some hard data for you. Scroll down to figure 1. Scroll all the way down, past the table, until you get to figure 1. That's figure 1A and figure 1B. That's right, as always. Now, right away, you see a telltale sign of how the silencer is behaving already. Blowdown does seem relatively long, and you can see that in the free field blast overpressure in Figure 1A in the full time regime of combustion blowdown and mechanical operation of the weapon. In the zoomed in view in Figure 1B, you can see how the first jets are being decoupled from primary flow, indicating that there is indeed a lot of momentum propagation control happening, that it cannot happen without that. What you're not seeing is a super high distal flow rate here. You just simply are not seeing that in the pressure propagation. You do see the first round pop is very visible in early time in pressure space. And when you move to impulse space in Figure 2, you really see first round pop, the FRP, accumulate relatively quickly. The slope of like if you were to take the derivative of that. Anyway, you can see it's popping up fast. I'm trying to use terms that are relatable to you. The slope is steep. Okay. To bystanders, you will certainly hear that. There's a clear delineation in the shot string from the first shot then to the subsequent shots. And just so you know, just so you want to understand, and we could talk about this at a later date maybe, but wave shape plays a significant role in loudness. These are physics that have nothing to do with silencers, but are just showcased by silencers. And I can talk to any of you about that. Wave shape is very important. It's not just amplitude. Okay. So I'm telling you, look at that. You're going to hear that FRP. You will hear it. The silencer actually does not mask FRP. I'm sorry, it does not. However, it does offer a lot of consistency after that initial purge. After FRP is over and the extra oxidizer is no longer present in the silencer, this silencer has incredible consistency, which is actually a very positive trait. Now, some people, I know, I read the feedback, and I've been given private feedback, and I try to remain as objective as possible. I mean, this is just facts, but I know, if you're the manufacturer, if you're a dealer, if you own the silencer, you might say, oh, why is he saying bad stuff? It's like, well, it's not bad. It's just, it's reality. And I can explain to you why what you're seeing is happening. One of the reasons the FRP is so noticeable in this particular silencer is the way the blast load can propagate in every chamber to the annular space. Like, the way it's designed, you simply don't have a lot of opportunity for quenching. And I think you get what you get here. It's one of those things where the chain is just simply not getting interrupted. The combustion chain is not getting interrupted. And I think the saving grace, if there is one, and I think there is one, I think the saving grace is that because there's so much surface area for function, I think the FRP is not nearly as bad as it would be otherwise. And I know that might not be a satisfactory explanation for you or to you, but let me tell you, if you change this core design, and look, I don't design silencers, and people ask me all the time to do it, but I'm going to give you this is free consulting, no charge. Okay, listen. If you take that core that they have in here, and instead of running the ridges from the cones to basically diamonds with a finite thickness of core wall, and you just instead just ported the core, your FRP would be so much louder. Okay. So by its nature, the mechanism of suppression that this silencer uses, what the designer chose to do, it does result in FRP. but it also deals with it as much as it can. And it could be worse. Again, I that might not be satisfactory to you, but that is the best way I can explain that without basically like designing a silencer for you. Okay, I hope that helps. And I do think I should have mentioned this in the physical characteristics, but this design is, in fact, it is classified as a hybrid design. It is a hybrid design. It's just that it isn't showing some extreme shooter zero hazard reduction that some other hybrids show on this weapon system. Now, I do think I would consider this silencer a hybrid on the higher end of the Omega range with a solid end cap. I think that tuning the gun or tuning the silencer with a vented end cap would be prudent if you're interested in reducing free field operator risk. I don't think anyone experienced in this would argue with that. The muzzle waveforms simply do not indicate you would expect anything else to happen here. Okay, now, if you want more to back that up, Pew Science members, you want to move into the shooter zero data analysis and the full report that you have access to, you can really see some interesting things. Again, not a lot of telltale signs you would have low back pressure. Okay. In so many words, this is matching up with the suppression rating metrics that we talked about. You're not seeing a ton of front-loaded FRP, for example, but you also aren't seeing wild positive phase impulse swings from insane back pressure. So things are humming along, sort of middle of the road for this test host. It's definitely not a bad place to be. We know this host is quote-unquote overgassed for silencer users. No ifs, ands, or buts. We know that. But we also know from the research that the BOE Mod 1 has a stellar muzzle suppression rating. So in that respect, we're really good to go for tuning the gun and getting a stellar pressure field. I do think that. And another thing that this means is that near reflecting surfaces like berms and trees and cars and buildings and whatever inside a building, next to a building, this silencer is going to do better than some others with rifle tuning. Now, speaking of, actually, let me clarify why I said with rifle tuning, because you might think, well, it's just the muzzle suppression rating that makes it not reflect. I'm like, well, right, Jay? I'm like, well, that's true. However, you are getting blast overpressure out of the ejection port, yes? That is causing elevated shooter zero risk, yes? Imagine if you put the ejection port facing a wall. Is that blast load still coming out? Yes. There's some directionality. And that wall, and even if you're on the left side or the right side, that ejection port blast is going to expand spherically in 3D space, and it will reflect off that wall too. So when you tune a gun, it's going to help you everywhere. I'm not telling you to tune your gun. I'm not telling you to buy a silencer that makes it so you have to tune your gun. I'm telling you, if you tune your gun, I'm telling you what would happen. I'm not telling you to tune your gun. I'm telling you what would happen if you did. Again, Articles 6110 and 6111 if you want to see proof. Okay, we don't sell silencers. We don't sell guns. We don't sell gas blocks. Okay, just deal in risk. Okay, let's look at performance comparisons now where the rubber meets the road at a time of 38 minutes and 29 seconds. Man, I had a good workout today. I really focused. Had the headphones in, just dead nuts, got my reps in, felt good. Squats were good. I don't squat as heavy as I used to, just getting older, but I don't use any supportive equipment anymore. Just basically free ball it. Don't use a belt or sleeves or wraps or anything. My knees feel real good. I have injuries, but my knees, I don't need equipment. I can just go in the gym. As long as I just warm up, I can squat. I don't need a routine of oh, put your knee sleeves on and oh, you got to help me get these on. No, dude, I can just squat. I think that's good. Okay, performance comparisons. Section 3 of the white paper has figure 5 in it. Scroll all the way down. Figure 5, which is pretty good. It's a bar chart. You're familiar with that. You all know and love it. And because it is a smaller data set, because it's the M4 and not the Mark 18, you aren't super overwhelmed by the amount of things on the chart. At least I'm not. Maybe I'm not. Maybe you guys don't get overwhelmed. I do. That's why I think the ranking section is so great. I was thinking of actually putting a little module in the reports. So instead of this static bar chart, maybe making a little doohickey, a little applet, so that you could have I don't know. That might be more than it's worth. But this is a smaller data set because it's the M4, not the Mark 18. Okay, so right away you see that, wow, the Mod 1 with a solid end cap with this muzzle brake on this gun, it is tied for the highest muzzle suppression rating here with the PTR Vent Spiritus. Now, this is larger than the Spiritus, but credit where credit's due. Okay, I'm not saying these are two of the quietest silencers on earth on this gun. They're just the ones tested right now, but credit where credit's due. Okay, look at the chart. There's some hitters on here. Okay, now the shooter's ear suppression rating on the Spiritus, it's higher. It's about half a suppression rating category. Well, it's below 30, so who's counting? But still in the 20s. But it's higher. The PIP in the PTR, that type of let me be careful how I say that, because you're going to see some things in the future with PIP that are not like this. Okay, actually, I'm going to just pause for a second. I'm going to take an aside here for you and tell you something to help you. Because we just compared the Mod 1 to the Vent Spiritus 556i. Just because a silencer has PIP in it does not mean the back pressure is going to be super duper low. What I need you folks to understand, and many of you do, but you might need a reminder. Purposely induced porosity or lattice structures that have very fine porosity do not in and of themselves significantly lower back pressure. Back pressure is reduced by increasing gross flow rate. That is one factor. The other factor is reducing early time blast load impulse accumulation in the first expansion chamber and in the first half of the silencer. These are two distinctly separate phenomena, and you can make a silencer with PIP that gasses you out if you wanted. So just because you see a silencer with PIP, do not think it's super low back pressure. It just so happens that the Vent Spiritus 556i is a low back pressure silencer and does really well. Okay? That has nothing to do with the Mod 1 in that the Mod 1 doesn't use PIP, but I want to inform you and set expectations for you that do not take certain technologies for granted. Do not think because there is a brand name associated with the technology that it's going to do something when it's applied to a different design. Okay, now there are other things in the table like flow through, literally flow through from Huxworks. You can be assured if a silencer uses flow through from Huxworks, the back pressure is going to be really low. You can be rest assured that if a silencer from Cat uses surge bypass, the back pressure is going to be really low. But those technologies are holistic technologies. PIP is not a holistic technology. It is a tunable design component technology. Okay. Off the soapbox, just want to continue this, but I wanted to make sure this is understandable for you. Okay, I've seen some people talking on the internet about this, and they are getting a little bit, I love that approval times are fast. I love it. I love that more people are getting into silencers. I love it. And I love that you guys are getting smarter, and a lot of you are experts. I love it. But be careful. Don't fly too close to the sun on some of the stuff. You can get burned when you're recommending stuff to people too. See, just be careful. The shooters, again, so the shooter's ear suppression rate on the Spiritus is higher, has lower back pressure, because the type of hybrid design that the Spiritus is or has is much more efficient at gas management, flow management, and back pressure management than the Mod 1. It just is. They're both hybrids, but it's like Animal Farm, like all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. Whatever you want to say. What other things are in the chart? Remember the Echo Zulu Defense X1R 556 Ti? I don't know why. I love that name, but I also don't love it, so I have trouble saying it. It's just X1R 556 Ti. X1, if I just called it the X1R, and then the 556 is the caliber designation, and then Ti. For some reason, the X, it's just like hangs me up. Anyway, that's just subjective. That silencer is outperforming it's outperforming a lot of stuff at the muzzle. I think, 41.9. So the Mod 1 is actually quieter than this at the muzzle. And they're actually closer to the shooter's ear than you would think. And these are both hybrid designs. But both of them are not allowing flow to happen quite as quickly in early time or in late time. They're a little bit higher back pressure. Again, the weapon tuning for both the Echo Zulu defense silencer and the BOE Mod 1 is smart. I think that both of those silencers they're really quiet. They're really great. I do think tuning for both of them is smart. I do. Now, you move into some other comparisons. This Mod 1 from BOE, it's actually quieter than the Flow 556 Ti, no question. It really is. But the flow rate, not the same sport. Okay, so be careful there. I want you to be careful. I want you to look at real data here. Now, near reflecting surfaces of those two silencers, I think the BOE Mod 1 is really going to shine next to a Huxworks. I do think that. That's just physics. That's blast momentum propagation. But your ejection port blast, again, like I was telling you earlier in the previous topic maybe, the ejection port blast can reflect off of nearby walls. So I think managing that with tuning is smart. Is that a theme of the episode? Maybe. Maybe not. But please at least consider what I'm telling you. The rest of the playing field in this chart has some pretty small silencers or classic silencers, and a lot of them do pretty well actually, especially compared to this Mod 1, which is good. I think the Mod 1 is a silencer that it's adaptable for a variety of calibers without a stamp change. It's a big part of why it is the size it is when you really think about it. I think if you're looking for smaller, you got to move down to the Mod 1S, which is their K silencer version of this. So, and remember, you do have the vented end cap options, something to think about. One of the big things that stood out to me when looking at the comparisons in this chart is the current state of the industry. You have classic stuff from Surefire, right? The RC2, which is basically, it's an old Ops Inc. technology that did very well when Ops created it, and of course it still does well. We're all friends, right? Can we just stop pretending that's not Ops tech? you see that in the RC2 and the Mini 2, and you get respectable performance in both those silencers, right? And they're super old. The technology in those silencers is older than Surefire silencers that contain the technology. Okay, just let's call a spade a spade. Let's not beat around the bush and sugarcoat things to make people feel better. Let's just tell it like it is. Let's say it. Let's say what it is. Everyone's friends. Okay, they're still selling their silencers. They're not going to get hit from this. Okay, it's not going to affect them. But you want to know the truth. That's the truth. You see some of the newer military silencers though, like the Knight stuff. I like them. They're cool. Are they louder? Yeah, they're louder, but they're cool. They do okay. You see some really modern stuff on here. PTR, Cat, Huxworks, the Echo Zulu we just talked about. They're crushing suppression. They're crushing it. And now you have BOE on here. Putting in work. Clearly, it's putting in work. It's like, is it bigger a little bit? Yeah. Is it huge? No. There's way bigger silencers that don't do as well. But size is a factor, to be sure. And there are things in this chart that are small and packing a punch at both the muzzle and the ear on this Untold Host. So don't forget that. I mean, you can't ignore that. Some of this is really advanced. I do think the industry is changing. I would actually argue that the industry has already changed, and the change is here, and it's continuing to evolve. And BOE, as you may know, it's a division of C Products Defense, and they make magazines, guys. Now they make silencers. And so do you see what's happening? This is not the only company doing this. It's a silencer arms race, and everyone's getting involved. We used to call this colloquially, in the silencer nerd circles, which are not public, we used to call this the Sound Wars. We've called it for decades, the Silencer Wars. But I really do think a more apt name is a suppressed small arms race. And we are witnessing a major phase of that arms race firsthand. Part of the reason for the race is because it's an untapped market. I do believe that. There are way more guns in the United States than silencers. So there's a void to fill. And another reason is manufacturing technology is advancing, so it's allowing folks to make things that were really difficult to make before. And so how many dang cone iterations can you make before you exhaust performance potentials? I'm not, I'm not saying there's no way to make a cooler cone with traditional machining. I'm not saying that, but I do think we figured out that in the first few years of Pew Science, we figured out kind of what all the traditional tech was doing. And we're like, oh, okay, we're kind of done. So thank goodness that this has happened, because now how many design iterations can you do with a 3D printer of new ideas? Well, I mean, I think the sky's the limit. I mean, we haven't even seen the potential of silencers yet. I don't think. I think this is getting nuts, because we're in an arms race that is spurred on by manufacturing technology that simply did not exist a decade ago. Okay, 3D printing did, but not like this, not at this scale. So I think things are going to continue to get nuts, and I'm so glad we have a 5-year head start on it, because we've characterized a gigantic portion of the market and how technologies work. And now when the new tech comes, we're ready, and we can slot it right into the taxonomy, baby. So we already have the framework, and that's what Pew Science built. This is purposeful. Pew Science built this on purpose. I didn't, like, when I started this company, I didn't just be like, oh, test some silencers and see how loud they are. Peak DB, put it in an article, and then everyone can debate. No, nothing to do with that. We're building a world. We're terraforming a new world, silencer world. Okay, yeah, it's big. Rome wasn't built in a day either. So, and you look at this Mod 1. As I told you before, we saw this design many years ago, and I think it's pretty cool that a company like C Products picked it up and ran with it. I think it's cool. Interesting concept, changeable cores, different materials, really solid performance, interesting system. I'm trying to be as objective as I can. All of these are true, I think. I think if you're into silencers, this is interesting. When I see it, and I said this during the intro talk a couple weeks ago, when I see a technology like this as an engineer and I get to test it and see the performance, I'm interested. My life's work is studying blast effects phenomenology and response. This is what I've done since I left grad school, and in grad school and left grad school and graduated. This is what I do. So, of course, I'm going to say this is interesting. It is. So I'm extremely thankful. One, I'm thankful for you folks listening to this podcast, and hopefully some of you share this enthusiasm with me. Two, I'm extremely thankful for C Products Defense and BOE Suppressors for trusting our laboratory to perform the dang work, to perform this independent testing analysis of their products. And you will see more from BOE in the future, and so stay tuned to this podcast for that. If you want to know, if you're new to this and you want to know like when we're going to release stuff, just sign up for our newsletter. You can do that on the website, and you're not going to miss any article publications. If you're a Pew Science member, I subscribe you to the newsletter automatically. If you unsubscribe, that's fine. So let me know. I can try to put you back on there. I don't know how that works. Subscribe again. I think subscribe again on the website. I don't know. I hope this overview was informative. I'm looking through this. We're about an hour in, and I'm looking through all this, and the article tells you what you need to know. I mean, all the articles do. But I'd like to talk real with you in plain English on the podcast and explain technical terms where I can. One of the things, let's see, I didn't plan on talking about this, but I can see some of you really wanting to know like what the Holy Grail is for this stuff, especially on these gas guns that are overgassed. And I'm afraid that there's no easy predictability for early time gas dynamics in the blast chamber other than, and I tell people this, I'm not going to design their silencers for them, but I do give a general piece of advice. And I would give this to anyone designing silencers right now. If you don't pay attention to how fast you can clear that wave off of your first reflector, you are behind. You're behind the curve technologically. And I know the terminology I'm using is something you might not be used to hearing, but it's real. And for decades, when people have been saying that just make your blast chamber bigger to reduce back pressure, it's just simply not true. And I want you to understand I'm not saying that with ill intent, and I'm not trying to judge you or be mean. But I am saying there are now, hold on, let me hit my browser. How many articles are on the website? There's 185 articles on the website. And if you go to the ranking section, just for posterity, just like for the historical record, this is a research diary at the end of the day. I went to the record section, sort of descending by record number. There's 206 record numbers in the table, meaning that there are, I don't know how many millions of data points on the website at this point. If you are not familiar with our research, if I sound confident when I'm saying this stuff, it's because I am confident about the conclusions I'm giving you on the podcast and about the engineering judgment opinions I'm giving you as well. When you look at these silencers, and there's no data for them from Pew Science yet, or published yet, or whatever, and you ask me, I can't tell you for whatever reason. If you have a photo of the blast chamber, if you have a cutaway, I can tell you what the silencer does in most of the time. Not exactly, but I can't predict it. No one can, but I can give you a feeling. I think if you listen to these podcasts and if you read these articles and you're a designer, you're going to be well on your way to getting to really achieving high levels of performance. When you look at this Mod 1, there are some things you think may happen, but you would be wrong. And I think muzzle device is smart to look at. I hope that I've explained that this silencer does well in what it does well, if that makes sense. It excels where it excels. It can be adapted with venting. And the fact that the venting at the distal end helps so much offers a window into what you could do to make it so that you wouldn't need the venting to do that. But you got to think about it. And I'm towing the line too close to design right now publicly. Not to mention ITAR. So we'll stop it there. Okay, just food for thought, please. tech@pewscience.com if you want to talk about this. So that's all for today. We're going to be back next week with Otter Creek Labs, the Infinity 300 Blackout technical discussion. I expect we'll probably, in fact, I think we have 2 articles to publish next week in the schedule right now. We have quite the backlog. We have a lot to show you folks. Just so you know, we have been doing some really wild stuff. There's some military systems we've tested. I just wish we could show you, and I just don't think that's going to happen. I wish I could say more. It's been exciting, and thanks for listening. This has been so cool. And I just went to the rankings table, and it's like, this was data point record number 205 in Article 6183. So we're now into the 200s of the performance records. So we're really, gosh, you're about to be able to run statistical analysis on this, which is scary, which is so cool. Okay, so again, we'll be back next week with more data and analysis. You might be surprised by some of it, maybe not, but it'll be educational. Okay, thank you so much for listening, and I'll talk with you folks again soon. All right, bye.